Alleluia, Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed. Alleluia.
We have walked with our King this week. We started on Palm Sunday, where we saw the King revealed in humility, riding a borrowed beast. And on Maundy Thursday, we saw our King revealed in service, kneeling with basin and towel and giving this meal of his own body and blood to the church. On Good Friday, we saw our King revealed in suffering, reigning from the tree. And this morning, feels like it should be all wrapped up and concluded, right? Like this is the end of the story. But I'll just ask you, does it feel like a tidy end that we get from Mark's gospel this morning? They go to the tomb, they don't see Jesus. An angel tells them that he's gone ahead of them to Galilee, and they run away, and they don't say anything to anyone because they're afraid. Happy Easter. And yet, that's the gospel appointed for today. It feels abrupt. It almost feels wrong. But that open ending is precisely the point this morning. The resurrection is not a period at the end of the story, but a summons into how the story has changed now because Jesus is not dead, but is alive forever. Like the women, we long for closure. We want something that we can see and hold. We prefer that our faith to kind of come full circle on Easter morning, like a movie that ends with our resurrected Lord meeting us joyfully outside the empty tomb, like those paintings you see, right? Like the cover of your bulletin. He's resurrected and glorious, and we're there with him, and the stone is kind of rolled away from the tomb, and everyone's like giving high fives and fist bumps, and Jesus probably has a secret handshake with everyone, and then it fades to black. And that's it. That's the end. But that's not what we get. The credits don't roll once Jesus is come back to life forever. No matter how much we want something that we can wrap up and label and walk away from so that we can maybe just get on with our lives. We can celebrate Easter and then get on with it. I've been to church 28 times in the last week. This is the last one. Oh, man. Now it's back to normal, right? I love being here with you. And I know you like being here too, by the way. Let's just clear that up. Jesus rises from the grave, leaves the tomb behind, and calls us forward, not with a glorious appearance to us or to the women, but he calls us forward into our future with nothing more and nothing less than his word. And that, this morning, is how our King is revealed in glory. The women rise, Mark says, very early after the sun had risen. Kind of a contradiction almost. Unless you take when the sun had risen to be like Malachi 4:2, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. Like Jesus, the Son of Righteousness, after he had already risen. The women get up very early and they come to the tomb. They go to the tomb to finish this work that had begun on Friday night when Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who were two Pharisees but secret disciples of Jesus, they took his body down and anointed it with dry spices. I think the Gospel of St. John says something like 75 pounds of spices that they anoint Jesus' body with. But the sun was setting on Friday. The high Sabbath of the Passover was about to begin, and religious observant Jews that they had to be not working anymore by the time that the sun set. And so the work of preparing Jesus' body for burial had to stop. So the women, as soon as they can, they would get a really early Sunday morning. They're racing against the clock because dead bodies decay pretty fast in that climate. And they're racing to the tomb carrying these spices. The ones that the women had were probably mixed with oil to anoint Jesus' body. They were fully expecting to come to the tomb and find Jesus broken, wounded, savagely treated corpse. Because they wanted to honor their friend. You can imagine what they were facing if you've ever had to kind of approve or sign off on a loved one's body for funeral planning, for example. That's the frame of mind these women were in. And then, like a family 30 minutes into their road trip vacation, they realized they forgot to pack something. In this case, they didn't forget to pack something, but they thought of everything but this. Who's going to roll the stone away? This is so human. This is so normal. Their love for Jesus raced right past practical questions like, how are we going to get at his body? They just wanted to honor him. This stone, probably, you can imagine, was a very large stone. It's not like a little rock that all three of these women could manage. And likely, this was a circular stone set on kind of on a groove in front of the tomb on an incline. So when they hoisted this thing up into place, it rolled down and stopped to seal the tomb. So you couldn't, you'd have to be very strong to roll this thing uphill to get at the tomb. Matthew's gospel tells us that the stone actually was like out of, not even adjacent to the tomb at all. It was like laying flat on the ground, and the angelic messengers were sitting on top of it. Thankfully, when they get there, they realize the stone is already rolled away. See, God had acted in the dark before they even had voiced the need. And this single messenger sits where death ought to be. Death has lost its hold on Christ and on everything Christ has claimed as his own, including you. The king is not where we left him on Friday. The angel announces to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is risen. He's not here. Look, see the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he's going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Everything rests on this last phrase here. Just as he told you. From the first call, early in Mark's gospel, by the Sea of Galilee, "Follow me," Jesus said to these fishermen. To every passion prediction throughout the gospel, Jesus has never once failed to do exactly what he said. That's one of Mark's big themes. You can trust what Jesus says. Good Friday looked like the end. Rome saw an executed criminal. Hell saw an apparent victory. The disciples saw a dead friend, and if the story stopped there, then those assumptions would all be proven right. The cross would remain what the world always thought that it was, a monument to defeat and disgrace. But Jesus said that he was going to die and that he would rise again. And he did. And in rising from the grave, Jesus has taken this instrument of curse and forged from it a scepter of grace by which he reigns over heaven and earth. And that changes how we live right now. When old guilt flares up and whispers, "You're not really forgiven. You've sinned too much. You're going to sin again. It's going to be worse next time than it ever was before. You're way too guilty to possibly be forgiven." Friends, we point to the living Christ, still bearing the proof on his body that he was crucified. Paul says in Romans that we were baptized into that death. that satisfied God's judgment against sin. We were baptized into the death and resurrection of the crucified one. And when suffering presses in on you or on those you love, and you wonder if God has just misplaced you or forgotten you, remember, when Jesus was raised from the dead, he still had the scars. Jesus glorifies the wounds that he bore for our redemption. And he will bring glory through your suffering too. Everything we suffer, every gram of suffering that we have to bear, every teaspoon of suffering you have to drink, prepares for you an eternal, unfading weight of glory that will be revealed to you probably sooner than you think. And Jesus, the crucified one, renews this promise every time he feeds you with his body and blood, given for you. So church, this morning, lift up your heads. The crucified one is alive, just like he said he would be. And the cross you bear is not futile. It's not pointless or worthless. Because Jesus rose from the dead, the cross is not an instrument of despair and defeat and disgrace anymore. It's what we are all called to bear as we follow in the footsteps of the one who by his dying destroyed death and by his rising again opened the way to life and immortality. The cross has been authorized in a way by the resurrection, and what Jesus authorizes, no power in heaven or earth can ever undo. Our King keeps his word. Now, you might have noticed on Thursday and on Friday and now even today, one disciple in particular keeps coming up in these stories. On Thursday, he was the guy who said, Jesus, you can't wash my feet. On Friday, it was the one who said, Jesus, I would die for you. And then abandoned Jesus. Not even abandoned him. Told anybody who would listen, I've never met this guy. I don't know who he is. Now, on Sunday, he is the one disciple mentioned by name. Our church is named after him, actually. St. Peter. Go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Why single out Peter? The thing about Mark's gospel is that Mark was an associate, a mentee, perhaps, of Peter. So Mark is kind of Peter's gospel. That's one way to think about this. Another way to think about it is that the last sound Peter heard before the roosters crow that night was his own oath that he never knew Jesus. If anyone assumed that he was cut from the roster, it was Peter. Nobody else needed to hear this kind of comfort. Peter did. Go tell his disciples and Peter. The first personal invitation of Easter bears the name of the one who failed Jesus the worst, which is an invitation for all of you to put your name there. Go tell the disciples and Carl. Go tell the disciples and being imperfect, failing spectacularly, does not disqualify you from celebrating Easter. It does not disqualify you from receiving Jesus' grace. In fact, it's the opposite. It makes you a prime candidate for receiving Jesus' grace. None of this is earned. The more spectacularly we are in need of Jesus, the more spectacularly we can receive from him. The risen King on Easter is faithfully knitting back these people who shattered under the pressure of their own faithlessness to him. And these directions, he's going before you to Galilee. The King calls them and he calls us into this future shaped by the resurrection hope and a future of cross-formed lives. We are summoned ahead into vocations that look painfully ordinary. It's going to be another Monday tomorrow. Your loved ones are still probably going to be sick. We are all terminal. We are all going to die unless Jesus comes back real soon. Easter doesn't mean that your whole life turns around. We are summoned ahead into conversations where we bear news that seems too good to trust. We are summoned ahead into days when fear rattles our bones because God is doing more than we can process or imagine. Even if he told us his whole plan, we wouldn't be able to comprehend it. And so like the women at the tomb, aware that God is involved in what is happening, they are trembling and afraid. And at least for the moment, they don't tell anybody. I mean, the word does get out, obviously, because we're here 2,000 years later. We go not because we are strong enough, because we're not. We go not because we are faithful enough, because on our own we're not. We go because the King has gone ahead of us to Galilee, and he calls us forward. He's not at the tomb where we expected to find him. He is alive, just like he said he would be. And he's gone ahead of us. He told his disciples, by the way, before all of this went down, I'm going to be killed, I'll be raised to life on the third day, and I'll meet you in Galilee. So he had told them this beforehand. This isn't like surprise directions for them. I think one of the things that makes Mark's gospel feel so relatable is that the women's encounter at the empty tomb that morning is like our encounter with Jesus always. They don't get to see him. They just get to hear of him. That's every Sunday here. We don't get to see Jesus, but we hear his words. We hear his promises. We are reminded again that his word is faithful. We can take it to the bank. We can build our lives on it. And that he has gone ahead of us. He is already ahead of us in our future. He is there tomorrow morning, waiting to greet us. He'll be there Tuesday. He'll be there Wednesday. The King summons us unready and unworthy as we are to meet him where he has gone ahead of us. So the women run, trembling, astonished, and speechless, and Mark just leaves us hanging there, like with our breath caught in our throats. Now there's some debate about whether Mark's gospel ends there after verse 8, or because the earliest manuscripts don't have the rest of Mark's gospel that's printed in all of our Bibles. And I'm not going to get into that today. That's more a Bible study thing than a sermon thing. But the gospel lesson for this morning ends, anyway, right after verse 8. And I don't think that's an awkward thing that we have to just get over. I think we can leverage that and think about it like this. The gospel is leaving the page and entering your lives. This is a call not to like, wow, that's kind of an abrupt end. Anyway, close the book on that and get back to whatever else is important in our lives. No, it's an invitation to trust his word, to go ahead and meet him in your own Galilee. On the road ahead, in bread and wine, in the neighbors, the people in your lives that need the love of Jesus. Brothers and sisters, the King is revealed today in glory. He is not where we left him. Death could not hold him, and neither will it hold you. He keeps his word. Every promise sealed in scars now radiates with life. And he summons us, unready and unworthy people, restoring failures like me, like you, for kingdom work, until he returns and we do all see him. And when that happens, we will never be parted from him. ever again for all eternity. Alleluia. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. Amen.